Well, the show this week starts out with Vanita being brokenhearted over that little leprechaun JT and his big announcement that he has a girlfriend. Vanita calls Leva to give her the news, and Leva's shocked because she can't figure out how he has a girlfriend given the fact that he's always around and she's never met anyone. Vanita says that a part of her heart is shattered, and now we know that she was really twisted up about this geek, which I just can't personally understand for the life of me. I mean, Vanita, you are so much better than that. Then we meet up with Madison and her new best friend, Austen. I mean, do you guys remember when these two couldn't be in the same room without ripping each other's heads off? Well, times have changed, and I mean really changed. I mean, these two are tight in the friendliest way. They do some oyster shooters, they order champagne, rosé, and Aperol Spritz. And then Austen tells Madison about everything that went down when he finally met up with Craig at that lunch where Craig brought Shep to be the buffer. Austen tells Madison that he thinks him and Craig are having a fundamental breakdown, and Madison looks at Austen and says, hey, you have a full life. You have the job, you have the house, you have the girl. Stop chasing him. She tells him to just go about his business and that she thinks playing hard to get will make Craig come running. Then Craig and his queen bee, Paige, go shopping for bees, the kind that produce pollen and sting you. These two are clearly not ready for kids, and since Craig can't have chickens in his community, bees it is. While they're at the bee farm, they start talking about their future family, and Craig says that the thought of it really warms his heart. And Paige says, if I'm being completely honest, sometimes you make me feel like I'm 75 years old. And it's clear that Craig and Paige are on very different pages. Then we see Molly at a photo shoot in a pretty pink dress in a pool, and we learn all about her modeling journey. Then we pivot over to Shep, who is the object of Molly's desires, and he is pining over another person, his girlfriend, Sienna. So Shep FaceTimes Sienna, and what we end up seeing is such a sad, pathetic situation because poor Shep is just turning himself inside out to get this girl to like him. And not just like him, but be with him, like long term. Meanwhile, it feels like Sienna could give two shits. Shep says to camera, it's been a long time since I was this twisted up about another person. And then we learn that Sienna has agreed to host Shep and the entire crew when they take their cast trip to the Bahamas. Shep goes on to ask Sienna if he'll be able to meet her family while he's there visiting, and she very curiously says, you know, I don't think any of them are going to be around. And it is not looking good for Shep. The poor guy is rattled, and it is fun to watch. He says to camera, you know, I'm not an insecure person. I'm really not. But when you're really into someone, your mind can play tricks on you. Then it's time for the gentleman's dinner over at Miss Pat's. Austen is the first to arrive. Him and Whitney head on out to the piazza, and that's where he downloads Whitney on all the latest that's going on between him and Craig. Austen tells Whitney that he's not upset that Shep and Craig have been hanging out, but what he is upset about is the fact that Craig's triangulating the situation. Then Shepard arrives, followed by Ryan, you know, that quiet guy with the eyebrows? The one that we sometimes see but really know nothing about? Well, anything other than the fact that he has a handsome husband. Then Craig shows up, and Miss Pat is quick to explain that her excluding Craig from her birthday party wasn't purposeful. Then Shep spills Miss Pat's secret about the fact that she actually took the rolls out for a spin and smashed it into a curb. And Pat announces that she is officially done driving. Then it's time for an Italian feast on Napoleonic china, and they're only a few bites in before Miss Pat turns to Craig and says, so how are things with Paige? And Craig says, about the same. And Pat says, have you ever thought about an ultimatum? And Craig says, no, I haven't, because I like what we're doing. And then Austen to camera says, does he? Because I've never heard anything about the ins and outs of their relationship. He's never even told me that they've had a fight. Pat asks Craig how long the two of them have been together, and he says, only 2.5 years. Everyone thinks it's been a lot longer. And Pat says, well, you know, you could go on like that, but it would be interesting to see what would happen if you asked her. You know, if you proposed, and then you would see what she really wants to do and whether she accepts or she doesn't. Craig says, we're gonna get married. You guys have to remember, I haven't asked her yet. And Pat says, well, if it doesn't feel right after 2.5 years. And Craig says, no, I'm sorry. Listen, I am going to propose soon. And suddenly everybody perks up. Oh, what was that? What did he just say? He said he's going to propose soon. And Craig goes, well, you know, soon meaning probably by the end of the year. And then they flash back to that bee farm where Paige said to Craig, listen, if you were to start putting demands on me about our personal life, you'd have to go. And then Craig, in an attempt to just shut it all down, says, listen, guys, Between us, I actually showed her a sheet of rings and asked her to pick out her 2 favorites. And she did. Pat asked which ones she picked and then commented that they're gonna both need side diamonds. And then Austen says, so after this happens, are you gonna tell her that you want her to move here? And Craig is right back into the guys. What makes you think that we only have to live in one place? Austen's getting frustrated. He excuses himself to the bathroom and he's not halfway down the hallway before Miss Pat goes, Whitney, don't. And all of a sudden, Whitney topples over in one of her very expensive chairs and breaks it. Then it's time for dessert, and as the guys are stuffing their faces, Craig asks Shep if the girlfriend Sienna is excited to have them all come down to the Bahamas. And Shep goes, yeah. Whitney picks up on it and point blank asks Shep, are you in love with her? And Shep says, well, we've said we loved each other more than once, actually. Austen asks him if they're full on in a relationship, and he goes, well, yeah, but like we haven't seen each other in a month and a half. Then Ryan with the eyebrows says, well, isn't it true that you sometimes have trouble even getting a hold of her? And Shep goes, yeah, but she's a very busy girl. She's got a lot going on. And Craig goes, well, we're going to find her. We're strapping up and flying to the Bahamas. Pat says, and then what? And Shep says, I'm really not sure because I'm honestly not sure where I stand at the moment. And Whitney goes, I'll tell you where you stand. I'll tell you exactly where you stand. You're not rich enough. You're boring. You're not famous enough. And that's the overriding issue. Sorry. Pat tries to make excuses for Whitney's bad behavior, but they all fall flat. And Pat retires to her boudoir, and as soon as she's gone, Whitney says, so we're gonna go to Nassau, but she has no interest in you. And Shep goes, that's bullshit. And Whitney goes, you know she reached out to me first. And Austen goes, what? And Craig goes, yeah, she was talking to Whitney on Raya first. Ryan's eyebrows go crazy. Whitney goes, we never talked on Raya. She just liked me first. I never responded. Then he turns to Shep and says, it must suck. Me being better than you. And this Whitney is just weird. Then the guys go outside for cigars, and when Whitney walks away to get the cigars, Craig goes, it's like having dinner with your granddad. There's just no filter. Ryan asks Shep how he envisions his ideal Bahamas trip turning out, and Shep says, part of me thinks it'll be all kumbaya and we'll remember how happy we make each other. And then great, and then we'll move from there. Austen goes, you guys are gonna be in the Bahamas. You're gonna have a good time together. Craig gives an enthusiastic yeah, and then Shep just hangs his head and says, yeah. How do you guys feel about Southern Charm this season? Are you loving it? Is it falling flat? Comment below and let me know. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more Generally Speaking.